Hello, guys. Good to see you. Bonjour tout le monde. Allô, allô. So I hope you're enjoying beautiful Peru and that you're not too tired. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm happy to see you. Second, okay, we'll continue. Second, I was just in Chile. I had good conversations with my counterpart, met many ministers, and signed an important MOU, an important agreement, because as Canada has been facing wildfires, Chile has been and is right now facing wildfires. And so we got to an agreement with Chile to be able to send Canadian firefighters to help them, and meanwhile make sure that Chilean firefighters can come to Canada. They've done so. 62 of them were in Alberta fighting our wildfires recently, but we just wanted to make sure that that was formal cooperation. And I know that's important to Canadians, and it's important to Chileans. And I met also with families that lost their homes because of wildfires in Chile. And so we're also helping them go through the mental distress of having to deal with wildfire. So this is just an example of the work that I did in Chile. Je vais juste le dire en français, and then I'll talk about APEC. Okay, so j'étais au Chili, j'ai rencontré plusieurs de mes homologues. Le Canada est le plus gros investisseur au Chili. On a une grande relation avec ce pays important de l'Amérique latine. Nous avons signé un accord pour la coopération en matière de feux de forêt. Donc, le Canada, on sait qu'on a subi beaucoup de feux de forêt. Il y a 62 pompiers qui sont venus à l'époque aider le Canada à contrer les feux de forêt, donc 62 pompiers chiliens. Là, on voulait s'assurer qu'on s'entende entre pays pour que, justement, des Canadiens aussi puissent aider le Chili lorsqu'ils font face à des feux de forêt importants. Et pourquoi on fait ça? C'est parce que, bien, on le sait, c'est un pays de l'hémisphère sud, donc quand c'est leur hiver, c'est notre été, et vice-versa. Donc, l'objectif est vraiment d'améliorer la coopération. Now, APEC. So we arrived yesterday, and I've had many meetings, but the two ones I wanted to highlight was first a meeting with Secretary Blinken. We talked about several issues. The first one on the bilateral side is we have already signed an agreement and got to an agreement on the Columbia River Treaty because we think it's important that Canada and US are able to have a clear agreement on water management on the West Coast. We got to an agreement back in June, and now it needs to pass Congress, so we'll be working on that together. We also talked a lot about Haiti, about what is happening in Ukraine and the involvement of DPRK troops in Ukraine, and we also talked about the Middle East. And this morning I just met with my Chinese counterpart. The goal when it comes to a relationship to China is that, of course, we'll always defend Canada's interests, but we need to have a predictable relationship. And that's my job. And so that's why I was engaging with Wang Yi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, following my visit in Beijing. And so, of course, I raised achievements we were able to work on, which is a recent air transport agreement with China, and also cooperation to combat fentanyl, and at the same time raised foreign interference and also the public inquiry linked to foreign interference, sending clear messages to China that we will never accept any form of foreign interference. And we talked also about Haiti, Ukraine, DPRK, as well as the Middle East. Donc, je vais juste dire ça en français. Maintenant, au niveau de l'APEC, j'ai eu des bonnes conversations aussi avec mes homologues, mais je vais vous parler en particulier de deux rencontres que j'ai eues. La première avec le secrétaire d'État américain, Tony Blinken. Premièrement, nous sommes entendus sur une entente de coopération sur la gestion de l'eau, particulièrement du côté de l'ouest du pays, et on appelle ça le traité de la rivière Columbia. Donc, on s'est entendu au mois de juin la dernière fois, mais là, il faut le passer à travers le Congrès. Et donc, on a parlé de comment on peut y arriver. Et aussi, nous avons parlé d'enjeux géopolitiques, bien entendu, Haïti, l'implication de la Corée du Nord en Ukraine et aussi nous avons parlé du Moyen-Orient. J'ai rencontré mon collègue chinois. Lorsqu'on pense à la relation avec la Chine, notre objectif, c'est quoi? C'est de faire en sorte de, bien entendu, encore toujours protéger les intérêts du Canada, les défendre, mais en même temps, notre objectif, c'est aussi d'avoir une relation qui est prévisible. Alors, j'ai parlé avec mon collègue de ce que nous avons été capables d'accomplir ensemble, une entente sur le transport, aussi la coopération pour contrer le fentanyl, mais aussi nous avons parlé d'enjeux géopolitiques incluant Haïti, la Corée du Nord et son implication dans la guerre en Ukraine et finalement le Moyen-Orient. Et finalement, j'ai aussi parlé du fait que nous n'allons jamais accepter quelconque forme d'ingérence étrangère. So you have enough now.
Almost. Can
Go
I
ahead.
just ask you about the United States?
Yeah, of course.
You're meeting with Secretary Blinken, you're talking about deals and treaties and agreements and where do we go from here in the relationship, but the relationship seems to be so fundamentally changing in a few months. I wonder about you and maybe all the leaders here, how can we take any American representative of the Biden administration sort of at their word, given that it's going to be a very different administration in a month and a half, a couple of months?
So it is true that it will be a different administration. At the same time, President Biden is president until January 20th, and as all transfers and transition periods, there are lots of things that can be accomplished during that transition period. And so that's why when it comes, for example, to the Columbia River Treaty, we think that we can have bipartisan support to make it go through Congress. And so we'll work on that. That's a key objective because we already have a deal with the administration, but we think it's a win-win situation for both sides of the border. British Columbia is on board, First Nations are on board, and we know we have the support of key senators also on the American side. So I'm in, results-driven mode right now, and that's my key priority. Of course, on the geopolitical side, there are many things that are evolving so quickly, David, that we need to continue to engage and we need to be able to adapt.
Justement, la relation avec la prochaine administration américaine apparaît instable, c'est tendu avec la Chine et avec l'Inde, même si je comprends que vous avez parlé à votre homologue Wang Yi. Est-ce que vous sentez que le Canada est de plus en plus isolé à ces sommets internationaux?
Non, absolument pas. Si vous regardez, là, on est en Amérique latine. Là. Le Canada, ici, même au Pérou, on est un des plus grands contributeurs d'aide internationale, le troisième le plus important, et le quatrième plus grand investisseur au Pérou. J'arrive du Chili, on est le plus grand investisseur étranger au Chili et un des très, très, très grands amis du Chili. Donc, puis quand on regarde la réalité de forums internationaux comme l'APEC, c'est sûr qu'il y a des enjeux qui sont des enjeux géopolitiques qui ont de l'impact sur ce qui se passe à l'APEC. Parce que l'APEC, c'est quoi? C'est une entente au niveau économique. Puis on sait que maintenant le commerce international et puis les tensions géopolitiques ont des impacts. Mais ultimement, le Canada a une voix très respectée. Et donc, c'est pour ça que je suis capable d'avoir beaucoup de rencontres avec mes homologues parce qu'ils veulent savoir aussi qu'est-ce que le Canada pense. Et dernier point, Laurence, qui est très important, s'il y a un pays dans le monde qui comprend les États-Unis, c'est le Canada. Et c'est pour ça qu'il y a tant de délégations qui veulent nous rencontrer. Ils veulent comprendre qu'est-ce qui se passe. Parce que, vous savez, nous aussi, on s'adapte à la nouvelle administration, on va le faire, mais le monde entier est en train de s'adapter à la nouvelle administration américaine. Et c'est pour ça que le Canada, nous, au contraire, notre influence va être encore plus positive.
Can you just repeat that last point?
Yeah, of course. So, if there's a country in the world that understands the U.S., it's Canada. And so that's why there's so many delegations, so many countries that are coming to see us, to ask us about the new administration, to ask us about how we and they can adapt. And so I think that Canada's influence is actually increasing because of the impacts that the world is now facing with the new administration. So we will continue to engage, and we will continue, of course, to engage with the US, but we will increase also our engagements across the world based on that. And last point also is, let's all remember, Canada will be hosting the G7 next year. And so we also have an important role to play as the new administration is coming, but also the world is adapting to its presence.
What was your reaction to Doug Ford saying that he wants to see he thinks Mexico may need to get cut out of a North American free trade deal?
I'm always happy to engage with Premier Ford. I know that many of my colleagues also from Ontario are doing so. But at the end of the day, what we want is predictability. We want to have a good free trade deal, and we want to have good jobs that are protected in Canada, and that's what we're doing. So for example, we've put 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs. We think it's in our national interest. We also think that it's important for good jobs in Ontario, and we'll continue to do that. I won't speculate on the future of the negotiation. We have a deal, and the deal is good until 2026, and afterwards we will be ready to engage.
Can we ask you a question about India, please? CTV News is reporting that an Indian terrorist on their list has been arrested and charged in a shooting in Ontario. And there are reports that the Indian government actually reached out to Canadian officials about this man, about his presence in Canada, and asked for assistance. Is that the case in terms of what Canada did?
Okay, so first, I won't comment any ongoing investigation, and we will continue to engage with Indian diplomats if there are any inquiries regarding this issue. I don't have specific information about what you're referring to, but we will continue to have conversations at the foreign ministry level on, first, violence that can happen in Canada, and making sure ultimately that we're able to find a way, a path forward. And I've been also in contact with the Foreign Minister of India.
Juste de s'aligner sur les Américains, là, sur nos politiques économiques vis-à-vis de la Chine, vous avez parlé des tarifs de 100% là, sur les véhicules électriques. Est-ce que vous avez des garanties que ça va être payant avec les Américains, ça, avec la prochaine administration Trump?
Bien, je pense que c'est important, premièrement, qu'ils soient au courant au sein de l'administration. Donc, il y a un travail de relations personnelles à créer. Et bien entendu, on a déjà informé l'administration en place, beaucoup de leaders syndicaux, beaucoup aussi de leaders du milieu des affaires qui sont au courant, parlent aussi à l'administration Trump. Donc, moi, je pense qu'on a pris une bonne décision. Je pense aussi que c'était dans notre intérêt et dans l'intérêt de la relation.
Thanks, your preparations about G7. Is your government making overtures to the U.S. in terms of a state visit by Donald Trump? As you know, U.S. presidents usually visit Canada first.
So, of course, we will work on the G7 preparation. We have a G7 Sherpa. She's been in contact with all the other G7 Sherpas. And yes, indeed, in 2025, Canada will be hosting the G7, and indeed, President-elect Trump will be coming to Canada like he did last time. And so that's normal course of business.
When other countries ask you about the United States, about the Trump administration, and Canada being a bit of an expert on that, what do you tell them when they ask you what's going to be the difference between the second Trump administration and the first one?
I think that, of course, the existing Trump administration has a lot of experience, but which is different when they were first elected in 2016, because, of course, President Trump won and at the time had to adapt to being now a politician and president. I think that a lot of things have changed since 2016 and their 2016 to 2020. First, it was before the pandemic. Second, it was before the Ukraine war. Third, it was before the Middle East war. And fourth, China has taken clear geopolitical stance that are very different where we were. And so I think people have a tendency to think that the world was pretty much similar, which is not the case. And so based on that, I think people are able to see the trends of the future administration.
It's all the time we have. Thank you. No, we gotta. Sorry, no, we gotta go.
The Indonesian Free Trade Agreement. How much is the impending new presidency focusing the mind,
Yeah.
creating a sense of urgency to get deals like that done?
I'm confident it will happen. Et puis donc, la dernière chose en français, je veux juste dire, je pense que quand je me fais poser la question sur qu'est-ce la différence, c'est la question d'Evan, entre 2016-2020, la première administration Trump et maintenant, je pense que le monde a changé. Premièrement, rappelons-nous, là, c'était avant la pandémie. Deuxièmement, la guerre en Ukraine n'avait pas commencé. Troisièmement, la guerre au Moyen-Orient n'avait pas commencé. Et quatrièmement, la Chine n'avait pas pris les positions géopolitiques par rapport à ces conflits qu'elle a maintenant pris. Je pense que les gens ont tendance à penser que le monde a été le même en 2016 et 2020 et maintenant. Ce n'est pas le cas. Et donc, ça a un impact sur la façon dont les différents pays